Like you gotta own up to a guy who's playing really well, even given his age, given his checkered-ish. I mean, he's one of the greats. His checkered-ish background with the men's national team. Next, we had Will Trapp again. I already mentioned how well I thought Will Trapp did in this camp. He's a guy that I think a lot of people have been looking to send out for quite a while now, but I don't think he's going anywhere. Same thing with Christian Roldan. I thought this game was a really tough situation because McKennie gets injured and Roldan has to come in and be in a very attacking position, something that is not ideally his game. This is the ideal game for Christian Roldan, where he's kind of pushed back. He's playing with Bradley a little bit more in the holding position, but then he can kind of break it out to Pulisic a little. I thought he did good while there were still attacking players on the field. When Pulisic comes off, I thought it was a little more difficult for him to kind of spring things into action because Sebastian Lletget, I don't think, was as good as he was in January. And I think he's one of those guys that, you have those expectations for after a January camp. And I wouldn't say they came crashing down. He just didn't do much. And in fairness, he didn't have a whole lot around him. He was actually playing with mostly guys that he'd played with in January. He wasn't playing with McKennie. He wasn't playing with Pulisic. He replaced Pulisic both times. So maybe the jury is still out on Lletget, which is a little annoying because with Lovitz and Lletget, those are guys that we would hope that you'd get a read on. So then you can either thin out the player pool or bulk in the player pool. But again, we're still kind of treading water with both those guys. One guy we're not treading water with is Paul Arriola. We know exactly what he is. He's a gritty winner, good speed. I thought his finishing, his distribution in the box was more sporadic than bad. I know he had the really bad miss, or I don't know if it was. The expected goals had to be pretty high on that one saved shot from Arriola, but I thought he's going to be a guy that's going to be part of the 23-man for the coming cycle. I think he deserves to continue to start. Jonathan Lewis, I talked about in my last video kind of, why is Tim Weah playing with the U23s? And Weah goes out and he starts 2 games with the U23s. Lewis comes into this camp, plays, scarce minutes off the bench, but his minutes are impactful. I really want to see him play more for NYCFC. He does have kind of that electricity, that explosiveness that you're looking for. And if he continues to do what he does for the men's national team, and I know he didn't register an assist or a goal in his scarce time out there, but he really kind of lightened the field back up, which is what you need out of a guy like him. Christian Ramirez did not play, didn't really learn anything about him, but I think it's fair to say that we won't see him again in June, maybe in favor of Sargent, maybe if Bobby Wood finds some form again. Zardes, in all fairness, I didn't think the difference between his Ecuador game when he scores the goal and the Chile game, which is the perceived better game from him, in which he gets the assist, I didn't think they were all too different. I think Zardes, you know exactly what you're going to get out of him. Very, hit or miss, and even his hits are around, 3/4 of what Josie's hits are. But he's stable. He finishes the easy ones, which, as for a striker, you could ask for far worse things to do, and he gives you a moment like that when he lays it off to Pulisic. Again, it was probably the best goal of the Berhalter era so far. I guess maybe the Arriola goal against Costa Rica can rival that one. But either way, I think Zardes maybe isn't as big as a winner as some people are making it out to be, but he's definitely a guy that made his... I don't know if he even needed to make his mark. He was going to be back on this June roster, and he is going to be back on this June roster regardless of, if he got that assist or if he got that goal. 2 guys that I think this camp was really dependent on how they would fare for Gold Cup is Jordan Morris and Corey Baird. Morris was kind of caught out of position in this Ecuador game. He was learning the system. He was playing right wing. He wasn't ideal against that low block system. I would have liked to see more time with him in Chile. He only had scarce minutes. I can't really judge anything too much from Morris. He's one of the guys that isn't back from January camp, so I'm not going to crucify him for not being, great at the system just yet. Baird, sadly, his ideas are really good. He has good positioning, or even great positioning. He has great ideas. The ball's just not there. The pace is just not there. It's kind of sad. You wish some of his instincts were in Pulisic. Pulisic would be a much better player with those instincts. But I don't see Barrett on this June roster.
So overall, we had a good amount of questions answered, but they're answers to questions that I think we could have gotten regardless of these two games. Question: can Tyler Adams play this right back or this inverted right back role? Absolutely, and he's great at it. Do Brooks and Long work as a pairing? Absolutely. Can Corey Barrett play against the highest level of competition? Probably not, and the answer was no. So I understand that this entire thing is a process looking towards 2022 in Qatar. I'm willing to stay along for the ride of it, but if you're expecting me to come out here and say, all of our answers are kind of coming through, I'm not going to do that. I mean, in all honesty, the one thing that you didn't want to see happened, and McKennie might not be able to play for a Gold Cup, and that's a big blow. So this international break is, and overall, I think a net neutral game. You're still undefeated in the Berhalter era. You integrated, your top European talent, one of which got seriously injured, the other which is going to miss a few weeks in Pulisic. I don't know. Reasons to stay optimistic, absolutely. Reasons to curb your enthusiasm a little are definitely there as well. I quickly just wanted to talk about kind of this 5-tiered system of who we play, who the men's national teams plays. Tier 5 is just most of CONCACAF, your Guatemalas, your Caraccas, your Bermudas. It's generally disorganized and most importantly just lacks the overall goal potential. These are the games that we should win. Then we have the Tier 4, which are the low block teams, the kin of which is Costa Rica, well organized, can counter, does not concede a lot of goals. Honduras falls into that as well. Ecuador, I guess they were playing like that today. They have the potential to be a better team than this, but that's who we played against. So we have now on the catalog for Berhalter a win against a Tier 4 team at full strength, or a team that plays like a Tier 4 team. Tier 3, organized, have good domestic leagues, but also have a small, impactful array of European talent. Mainly that's Australia, Japan, South Korea, and then in Tier 3, mainly because of rivalry, have the tendency to beat them is Mexico. Mexico might be more of a Tier 2 team, but we haven't seen Berhalter play against any of those teams yet. Tier 2 are your basically your World Cup group teams, kind of the deciding teams as to whether the United States would get out of the group or not. Denmark, Switzerland, a good array of the European teams. Chile is a very good example of a team that we would come up against in World Cup group play. So that was a good test right there, is Chile. And so I'm glad that we played them. The goal, I guess, is to get to this Tier 1, which, these are your World Cup winners up here. Europe, at this top level, you are in contention to win the World Cup. France, England, Belgium, Brazil, Argentina, Spain. We're not there yet. I don't expect us to really get results against that Tier 1. I want us to see more games against Tier 2 as friendlies, because we're going to be playing a lot of Tier 4 and Tier 5 in CONCACAF Nations League, CONCACAF qualifying. I think they're intermixed, or interlinked, I guess. And we're going to see that Tier 3 game against Mexico a lot of the times. So when we can play these top 2 tiers, I think we should take full advantage of it. And then quickly to finish off, we had our CONCACAF Nations League draw. I'm fairly certain, again, we don't know the full scale of, or the full scope of what CONCACAF qualifying is going to look like for the World Cup, because most importantly, they're getting rid of the hex, and we don't know how many teams. We don't know whether it's going to be 48 teams or 32 teams. Regardless, we have the CONCACAF Nations League, which mirrors the UEFA Nations League a lot. We have ourselves, Canada, and Cuba. So of the pot, 3 teams that were in the highest CONCACAF Nations League, which is, I guess, we'll call it the A-League. Cuba, I think, is probably the best of those teams that we could have gotten. I think, like, Bermuda, I think Martinique were in there. Regardless, Cuba, they have some talent. They have a good amount of
MLS players, obviously, with Ozzy Alonso. They have a good portion of USL players as well. They shouldn't be too much of a problem. That should be 6 points there. Again, we play Canada twice, home and away. We play Cuba twice, home and away. If we win the group, we go into a semifinal draw against the other CONCACAF Nations League groups. Mainly, I only bring this up because we're going to play Canada home and away, I think in November-ish. Canada is an interesting team. They're starting to develop a really good base of MLS players. Plus, you then have that attacking talent. You have Junior Hoylett over in Cardiff City. You have Jonathan David playing for Ghent over in Belgium. He's scoring a lot of goals. And then Alphonso Davies, who's the wonder kid. He's playing for Bayern Munich right now. I think Canada over time, I think we're catching them at a good time to play them in CONCACAF Nations League because neither of David or Davies especially, I think are at their full potential yet. So if we can pick them off, maybe even bump them down to CONCACAF Nations League B, that would be helpful for us. But again, it's going to be interesting. That's a good game. I think Cuba is still considered one of those tier 5 teams. Canada might be pushing a tier 4 team, those tiers that I was just mentioning. They're a good team. I think they're going to have a lot of potential to make the World Cup. And then we have already our 2 friendlies, it seems like, scheduled prior to the Gold Cup. We have June 5th against Jamaica. That one is going to be played at Audi Field in D.C. Jamaica's biggest question is Leon Bailey. He still hasn't been cap-locked to Jamaica just yet. He's the Bayer Leverkusen left winger, their most important player. Jamaica, I thought they were going to be a bit more impactful since their Gold Cup championship appearance against us in 2017. But they're not even in CONCACAF Nations League A. They're actually in CONCACAF Nations League B. So they're going to be playing some pretty rough opponents. I would suspect them to get promoted up into CONCACAF Nations League A. And then we have June 9th in Cincinnati. We have Venezuela. We're going to have to deal. That's probably going to be the toughest test in terms of attacking players that the Berhalter era has seen so far. They have Solomon Rondon. They have Joseph Martinez. Should be very interesting. I think Jamaica's more of a pot 5 team at this rate. And Venezuela, they're kind of tough to tell. The problem is Venezuela, if we're talking real world stuff, they're in turmoil right now. So, just outside of soccer, I'm not even sure how this game is going to get played. If this game is going to get played, I hope it does. I hope all is well for Venezuela, but only time will tell. Thanks for watching. This was my March kind of wrap-up video looking towards June a little. Hope you guys enjoyed.